everybody. This is ES Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm back to another week of ZKast, and I'm here with my co-host, Mark Reed Edwards. Mark, looks like you're in the Grand Canyon, or at least somewhere virtual fun.
Yeah, I wish I were there. It's a couple of years ago, but it's beautiful.
Well, I would say if you got to fake pretend you're somewhere, fake pretend you're somewhere cool.
Exactly. Like, look at the view behind you.
I know, it's quite nice out there. So it's at sunset, even though we're recording this in the morning. Who knew how that could happen?
Yeah, so technology, and that's what we talk about here too. So
yeah, it was sort of a little bit of a quiet week for tech. We had a couple of big news items. Do you want to start with the big one, or do you want to delve into some other items first?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that all new Webex that went GA this week, loaded with new features. What's your first impression of it?
Yeah, so with Webex, they announced a number of new features back at their Webex One event. A lot of them finally went GA. In fact, the company's got a branding campaign out now, hashtag all new Webex, to help promote some of the new things you can do. I think one of the interesting things about the new Webex is Cisco's trying to tie what all their new features to their new mission statement. So if you remember, Cisco historically has always been the company that changes the way we work, live, learn, and play, right? Now they're the company that wants to power a more inclusive future for all. And so a lot of the features that they built into Webex are designed to do this. And I actually think, they're pretty cool. Like, one of the more significant ones I think that was just announced is the ability to gesture. So we're not using Webex, but if we did and I put my thumb up like this, you would see a virtual thumb up come on the screen. Or if I were to clap like this, you would see applause on the screen. And those, to me, can be very meaningful for company presentations, especially within school systems, right? So I know one of the issues that schools have is getting feedback from students. And so if I have to go through the work of actually sort of clicking a button, right, that's kind of difficult. And you think of people that aren't very technically savvy, older people, older workers, that type of thing, they may not be as likely to participate in meetings because it's just kind of the process was kind of difficult to do so, right? So by being able to have the camera pick up those gestures, that allows more and more people to be included in the meeting. And I think what you'll see Cisco focus on is bringing together the ease of use and the new features with their mission statement of being more inclusive. So I thought that was pretty cool. They announced some other things that, cameras to make more laptops work, and a desktop so you can connect a lot of your collaboration tools. But to me, the changes they're making in software, I think, really highlight the power of artificial intelligence, which I think is going to be embedded into everything, but then helps us use these tools better. And the thing I like about it, Mark, is my colleague Dave Michaels, who I do another podcast series with, he actually talked about AI once, is you want it to be invisible. You don't want to have to think about it. If I got to go turn it on, if I have to go do this or whatever, then it doesn't work. It just has to kind of be invisible, and this one does. So again, if I, as my hands gesture, you see different things pop up on the screen, and that's a great way for presenters to get feedback as well, right? So you don't have a live audience, but this is a good way to get feedback.
Yeah, on their website, they say something about 10 times better interactions than in-person meetings.
Yeah, I don't know if we're quite there yet. That's sort of an aspirational goal. I think the Webex team would tell you we're close to it. But it's an interesting thing to think about, right? Because we always talk about video being just as good as being there. But with a lot of features like this, you can actually make it better than being in person, I think. And, one of the basic features that I think does that is just transcription. So if I meet with you, Mark, one-on-one, and we talk about a bunch of stuff, someone's got to take notes, right? And then someone's got to email those notes, and someone's got to clean them up. And then if we meet again, someone's got to send those notes back out. We got to remember where we stored them, things like that. A transcription capability, just it automatically transcribes. It's a perfect, not quite yet, but it's getting pretty close, and you can make changes like you can do custom vocabulary now. I was using a transcription tool and changed the word. I think it was like WebKit mini or something like that to web kidney, right? So.
Right.
But that transcription feature is good enough that actually when I'm in a live meeting now, which I don't do but I still do some, I'll actually turn on my collaboration tool and I'll run transcription because I want to capture those notes. So even though there's no virtual participants, I'm still using the tool. And I think that's that's a great way of knowing that. Even just having our name superimposed on the screen help, right? Like I
Right.
remember when in our Yankee group days when we used to have people come in the office and there was 10 people, I would take the business cards and I would basically arrange them in the order people were sitting in so I could remember people's names because I, was horrible with that. But now
Uh,
when everybody's name's on screen, you just know, hey, you're Marguerite Edwards, right? So I
yeah.
think that is a good indicator of how you do make video meetings better than in person.
Yeah, and just the thing that we've got behind us, the virtual backgrounds, kind of gives it personality, and it's those small steps. So it'll be interesting to see how WebEx was kind of the originator of this technology, and it'll be interesting to see how they do up against Zoom and Teams and other technologies.
Yeah, WebEx invented the category. There's no question about that. And I think one of the things that Cisco's challenged with is almost getting people to try it again. I think
Right.
Zoom came out with a lot of the whiz bang features like virtual backgrounds and the fun things first. I think, Javed Khan, their GM, has kind of admitted that we had some catch up to do and now they've caught up. But with Cisco's
Right.
resources, right? I mean, they could really step on the gas here. They're a massive organization. They can bring a lot of network
Yeah.
knowledge to this as well. So I think, like I said, their big challenge is can you get people to try WebEx again? Because I've used the new WebEx and the experience is entirely different than what you even think about a year ago.
Right. Well, we'll keep track of that. Another interesting bit of news is VMware's Pat Gelsinger is moving over to Intel as CEO, and I think he's got his work cut out there.
That was probably the big news of the week, right? It was we led off last week with that. Bob Swan, who was a finance guy, was running Intel, and I think he did clean the company up. But boy, does this company Intel have a lot of work to do. And I actually think Gelsinger is the right person to run that company. He's an engineer at heart. Intel is an engineering company. They sell to engineers. Intel, while they do a little bit of marketing to end users, they're not really an end user company. But if you look at the stock price of them and their competitors, Intel over the last period lost about 5%. Qualcomm was up 66%. AMD was up 88%. Nvidia was up a massive like 120%. And if you think about Intel, they have failed at almost everything other than PCs. Not a big data center vendor. That's gone to other vendors. In the mobile space, that's gone arms way. Even if you look in the PC space now, Apple's using ARM, right? They've shifted their processors over. On the GPU side, NVIDIA has killed them. So I think this is a company that's largely lived off one product, which is simply just putting PCs in computers. That market's, of course, flatter and decline. And I think Pat's got his work cut out for him. I think from a VMware perspective, certainly they just had a couple of other executives leave as well. So there's a big gap there. I think there's probably nobody more qualified to be CEO than Sanjay Poonen, who's their current COO. He's a very sharp guy. He's an engineer as well. I've heard he's a bit of a tough guy to work for compared to Pat, but I think he built the shoes nicely. If they go outside, I was quoted in an article saying this. I'd like to see VMware take a look at a female CEO, bring some diversity to Silicon Valley. There's not a lot. If you look at while there's been a lot of chatter about it, there's not a ton of female CEOs. Although VMware had one of the first with Diane Green, right? So. They have been down that road before, but I'd certainly like to see something there. Whoever steps into those shoes does have some big shoes to fill because Pat was about as good a CEO as it had come. But so congratulations. I think he deserves to be, CEO of something like Intel, but be careful what you wish for because the market trends certainly don't favor him. And I like him personally, and I think he's a very nice guy, and I wish him well. But Intel has some challenges ahead of him.
Strikes me that they're kind of two different jobs too. Running VMware and running Intel are kind of two completely different tasks. So how he will approach that will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, that will be interesting because when he was at VMware, they were the de facto standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you run a company that's the de facto standard, you've got Dell distribution, right? It's a much it's easier to be good in a good company. It's a little like sports. You can be a good quarterback on a good team, and as soon as you go to a bad team, all of a sudden you're a bad quarterback, right? So
Yeah.
Intel, while they're the market leader in certain segments, all the growth areas, they're not. So now Gelsinger, for the first time, he's running a company where he's got to come at this from behind, and he's a challenger, particularly in the mobile and on the AI space with GPUs. And so what he has to hope for there is that the AMDs and the Qualcomms and those types of companies, and in ARMs, they fall asleep, right? And even in NVIDIA, well, he finds an opportunity to catch up, and I just don't see that happening. Those are very, very well-run companies, they're competitors, and they're every bit as good as Intel, from a quality management perspective and product, but they've got the lead, and that's tough.
Well, speaking about the lead, Zoom hit 1 million seats on their Zoom phone product.
Yeah, that's I was surprised because they just announced 500,000 at Zoomtopia last it's September, October. So that means it took them about a year to get to 500,000 and then 6 months to get to 1 million. So anticipating they'll get to 2 months, probably in another 6 months or something like that. So you're seeing a big acceleration of the business. And to give you some perspective, when you think of the leader in cloud calling, everyone thinks of RingCentral, right? RingCentral took 5 years to get to 1 million seats. Now, granted, the market was different. Ring was evangelizing the market, but it did take them quite a while to get there. I think one of the interesting aspects of Zoom is users like Zoom, right? And I don't know, do users have a particular affinity to even Webex or Microsoft Teams or even RingCentral? That is a corporate purchase brought in through IT, right? Where Zoom had a lot of prosumer sales that almost forced companies to go that way. And so for them, I also think that users like the meeting experience. It means more to them because you can personalize it and things like that. Well, you can't really do that with phones. So I think if you're Zoom, once you've got the install base of meetings, it's easier to commoditize the phone business, or at least make it the throw-in, than if you're selling phones and then you want to try and attach meetings and displace Zoom, right? So Zoom displacing their phone competitors, to me, seems like an easier task than a Zoom competitor trying to replace the meetings. And so, I know I've talked to Eric Yuan, their CEO, about this at length for well over a year now, about what they're planning with the phone business. And he is like laser focused in on the phone business. I asked him, do you think you want to go contact center? Or do you want to go CPaaS? Do you want to jump into these other markets? And it's like, no, we are going to execute on phone. And that's their next big thing. And they're doing that. So, kudos to them. They certainly don't have the range of features that you might get from a RingCentral or Via or a Cisco or something like that. But we're in a world now, Mark, where maybe the 80% is good enough for most people now, right? Like, we don't need the super sophisticated phone systems with call freeze and attendant, call park and those things. Just for most people, you want to make a call. And actually, for most people, I think you've got the pivot that worked for them was COVID. When you work from home, PC calling is okay now, right? Where it really wasn't before. Nobody really liked to use the soft phone, but now we've all gotten used to it.
Interesting what the pandemic has done to technology in many ways.
Yeah, it's made us do things we really wouldn't do for even in our consumer behavior. I never really thought, I was, in fact, if you just think about like when you go to Starbucks, right? The mobile app's been available for years, but most people would stand in that long line, right?
Have their name transcribed incorrectly, and
and then some person would come in behind you, they'd walk, pick up their coffee and leave, and you'd be thinking, why am I doing that, right? But now if I want to get a coffee, the only way I can do it is to use the Starbucks mobile app, right? And same for Dunkin' or whatever. And I think that's changed. The same with shopping with Instacart and things like that. So it's made us try things that maybe we weren't comfortable with, but now we're comfortable with it, and it's hard to see us going back.
Yeah, there's certain things. I went to Lowe's this past weekend because I needed a certain kind of screw to fix something. And I thought, well, I can look online, but I couldn't really figure out what was the right screw. And there's sometimes no replacement for going in and looking at the screw next to the one you already have, that kind of thing. But Instacart and and
Yeah.
those online
Well,
shopping
I don't know. What if you
experiences
could
are
scan it with the Lowe's app and it tells you that this is what it is, right?
that
So,
would be ideal, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
found something that worked, but it wasn't exactly the same type of thing. And I try and avoid going into stores whenever I can. But that's been a lifelong pursuit for me.
yeah.
It's not it didn't start last March.
Well, you want to be able to scan it and have your 3D printer be able to print it up. So,
Exactly. We're working on that, right?
yeah.
So, speaking about being in person, CES happened and there was a bunch of stuff, some health tech, but I know you have some thoughts on how CES kind of worked this year virtually. And before we started, I said to you, the NFL draft worked probably better as a virtual event than it did as an in person event, but it feels like CES maybe didn't work better.
Yeah, I think there's certain things that do work better, virtual and ones that don't. There's certain aspects of conference, it's conference like Cisco uh, just announced that they're going to be doing a global Cisco Live for the first time. And they can do that because it's digital. So you just stream the Chuck Robbins keynote in whatever time zone you're in. You go
Right.
online, you watch the sessions you want. Now, what you don't get is a lot of the in-person meetings and face-to-face. But from that perspective, they've never been able to deliver one message to the entire world before, right? So for kind of a corporate event, that kind of works. NFL draft is a perfect example. People would cheer on from anywhere. You don't have to fly all the athletes together. I actually think they should do the inauguration virtually, but let's not get into a political discussion. Um, CES, though, this is the most quiet CES that I remember ever. Like, usually people are talking about CES in mid-December. Can't wait to go to
Right.
CES. Can't wait to go to CES. We've got stories written about what's going to be new at CES, and the news is dominated by CES. I hardly saw any news at a CES this year. And part of it is I just don't know if you can do a consumer electronics show virtually, right? I guess if you think about it, Apple kind of tries to do it. They have the big phone come up on the screen behind,
Right.
Mr. Cook or Steve Jobs before that, right? But for the most part, when you go to CES, you want to look in the Tesla, or you want to
Right.
be able to go see the new 80-inch Samsung TV, right? Or the Wall, as they came out with a couple of years ago. And it's hard to when I'm using, I'm on, this is a Cisco Desk Pro, which is like a 27-inch monitor. If I put a 100-inch TV screen on that, I'm not going to ooh and ah like the way I am in person, right? So
Right.
I think it's hard for me to see how much success CES can have virtually, just because so much of it, consumer electronics, is the touchy feely part of it, and it's too bad. But hopefully by next year, well, the vaccines rolled out, and we can actually have a real CES again.
Yeah. Yeah. But there was some interesting news. Health tech. Health tech
Yeah.
seems to be dominating consumer technology in some
Well,
sense,
as it
certainly on
should.
the
I did.
watches and so forth.
Yeah, I did see a study that came across something like 60% of Americans don't plan to renew their gym memberships after the pandemic subsides. And I think people have gotten used to working on their own. And Lord knows, Mark, there is enough trackers out there and workout tools and workout programs that you don't need a trainer whispering in your ear, do this, do this. You just need the
Right.
app to tell you. It's funny because I use the Strava app when I cycle, right? It's got these segments built into it. So, it'll tell me, like when I'm in San Mateo, that when I leave Roberts Market and Woodside, the 7 miles when I get to the pedestrian path at the end of Kenyatta Road, it's tracking me for that period of time. And knowing that it's tracking me makes me bike it harder because I've got a personal record to beat. And then you can go online and so it's like coming together as a community. There were a couple of things at CES that did a note, and a lot of it is the integration to Apple watches and Samsung, things like
Mhm.
that. So, for instance, Ultrahuman, that's a pretty rigorous in-home workout. Now they integrate with Apple Watch and they give users real-time feedback. Same thing with Samsung, and they have a smart trainer built into their phones and watches and TVs as well. So if you have the all Samsung experience, it's pretty cool. And I think that's what's really changed is with health tech, you now get immediate feedback. I can see what my heart rate's at. I can go up, I can step it up, I can step it down. It can tell me, to run faster or whatever, right? Even doesn't matter what the sport is, running, golfing, whatever you're doing, there is an app for it. And I think health tech has gotten, I don't want to say bloated, but there's so massive now that there's no excuse that you can't find a way to motivate yourself at home. And I can see gyms really taking the brunt of that, because it's, you just don't need that in gym experience anymore.
Yeah. So speaking of sports, who do you have this coming weekend? We got Buffalo and Kansas City, and we've got the Buccaneers at Green Bay.
I'm from New England, so everybody's got a love of Tom Brady. But boy, is Aaron Rodgers playing well. And I think when they drafted Jordan Love in the first round, that lit a fire. And, if you guys are going to draft him frankly, I don't know why he didn't play like this for years. It just, with Aaron Rodgers, seemed like he didn't care. This is the first year he cared. Given it's the Buccaneers' third consecutive road game, given they're on the road in Lambeau, given how well Rodgers is playing, it's hard for me to see Green Bay not winning, but it's going to be great to see, a Rodgers-Brady matchup, because we really haven't had many of those.
Right.
And on the Kansas City-Buffalo one, if Mahomes is playing, then, then I don't see Kansas City losing. But I think if this team out there that could beat them, it's Buffalo. They're really a good team. From a sentimental standpoint, I used to joke that you spell Bills with 4 L's, right?
Growing up in New York State, I was never a Bills fan, but I kind of appreciate them as a team. It's great to see them back kind of on that stage, though.
Yeah, and for us in New England, this is going to be an interesting next few years, right? To see if we can get a quarterback. Like, think about how long it took the Bills between Jim Kelly and Josh Allen, or even the Dolphins, right? From when they were Dan Marino, right? It's just like, it's very hard to find that kind of franchise quarterback. And, unfortunately, the Pats let one go. I saw somebody posting on Facebook yesterday. It's like, wow, Brady's good. Why can't the Pats get a quarterback like that?
Right. That's great. Yeah, we let him get away.
Let's see if I think a Rodgers-Mahomes Super Bowl, kind of changing the guard, is pretty interesting. And we were talking about diversity earlier. It's really interesting, too, in the NFL, how, although we had 3 white quarterbacks and 1 black quarterback playing this weekend, but if you look at most of the MVP candidates, Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, people like that, even Dak Prescott last year, Russell Wilson, there's been a real change into the guard. Breeze is retiring, and the stationary, white quarterback that doesn't move in the pocket, that's really given way to the more athletic mobile quarterback, right? And it's been good for the game. I think it's really a much more fun game to watch now. All right. Well, this brings us to the end of this episode of the ZKast episode. So on behalf of Mark Reed Edwards, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please click subscribe down below, and we'll see you next week.